Drew Spence from the Dynamic Universe. We're talking about the Dynamic Spider-Man Plus, and in particular, the Pete Mobile, which is Peter Parker's vehicle they use it to get around. I thought it'd be quite funny. Here it is in the opening shot from issue 1. You know, you have this 3D shot, and you get to see the bowels or under warrens of the futuristic city. All these cool vehicles and technology and everything. You know, the awesome shot of it rising up, flying around into the city. You see the huge looming air purifiers cleaning up the city. This is from Kitbashed 3D. These are models from them. And you get to big reveal of the Pete Mobile being this old school VW, you know, chug, leaving off his own set of just messing up the atmosphere too. And he reaches a technology gate, which is one of the checkpoints. The city is walled and ringed, as I said before. It separates the city into classes. This is best viewed with 3D glasses itself. And we have the introduction of the Pete Mobile. And he's inside, he's trying to get through the gate, and access is denied. He has a press pass to get into the city and to travel because he's a junior reporter for the Daily Bugle, but is very limited and it always doesn't work on the first try. So you already see that they have these giant gates walling off parts of the city, and he makes it through the gate finally. You know, the shields drop, and he's able to enter another area. So you can see that there's tiers to this. He rose up from one, he's about to descend into another. So a storm kicks out. This is dust storms because the atmosphere is very unstable. So he's in this dust storm, and you see him hang out the side of the car. He puts it in hover, and he heads out, and he's able to capture some footage. Then he flies to Aunt May's residence in Raina Heights and lands the car. And he puts it in basically regular street mode, and he goes visits. And this is the introduction of our Peter Parker character, which shows like he's already into a little bit of the climbing stuff. You know, he does some things here. So the car itself was bought on a 3D site. So this is a shot of the car. And this is what sort of inspired one of my takes on it. In this one, the front wheel was replaced with some sort of airfoil panel. We had an engine in the back, a lifter. So we needed this car. This was, it says that it's game ready. And I assume that means, I don't know what that means. I assume it means that it can be brought into the game engine, and it's been resolution ready and polygon ready, reduced in polygon, so it could be turned into a gaming asset. It was in Blender format that I used, but only to work on the models. I don't render the actual book in Blender. Well, I have done certain sections. That's not true. I have rendered certain sections and certain artsy elements in Blender, but that's not the rendering engine overall for most of the book. What else? So that's this model, because it's rigged for Blender or rigged for whatever engine it was supposed to be built for. Daz Studio that I use to do most of the rendering for the book, if it's not going to be done in post or stitched together, doesn't have the same rendering system. So to get an object into Daz, let's pull this up. This is where the item came from. So it was CG Trader. So this is the rocket wagon. There it is. Yeah, this isn't working. I don't know what's going on, but this is the basic picture of it, and this is the original vehicle that I grabbed. So I know I wanted to combine both this and the actual retro wagon and get the two together to come up with some kind of version of the Pete Mobile. Let's look at some of the shots. So one of the things I was a little aware of is I kind of wanted it to work a bit. So I kept the actual original wheels and then had it, they basically tilted up off of its axle and slid out the way. Now, this doesn't have to work because, again, this is a comic. I'm not really doing like some animation. I'm not making a toy that you have to play with and it's going to have to work exactly correctly. But I basically broke everything apart, took all the different pieces and melted it together into my own vehicle. So it would work if this was in Blender, and it does work if it's in Daz, but because I'm in between both programs, I just have it in different stages of transforming in case I ever need to pull it apart. But basically, there is a logic that this would slide up over the car shield. The wheels fold out. The other one doesn't have front wheels, so I kept the front wheels because I didn't realize it, but when I put it in the street, the car was very big in hover mode. So I kind of felt like I needed a way for it to like squeeze together and get smaller once it was put together. So let's take a look at what this is. This is them at the gate. So a shot like this started out, and this is just this panel of the storm arriving. Started with this. If you can see that. This shot is here, and this is him looking up at the dust storm. I love this. This is a coat hanger. I even put a coat hanger for the antenna. That's how that's the level of Peter Parker's problem solving. It's very funny. That's a coat hanger, and I slid that in there. If you guys, old school, remember that. What else do we have? Side shot. Whoops. Let's take a look at the side shot. This is the side shot. I reversed this, obviously. Or did I? I don't think I did. Maybe I didn't. I thought I did. But, this is him speeding along. This is that side shot. So this is like the plain isolated render. If you've never seen that before, let me show you something like that. So this would be the original shot. For some that don't know how some of this stuff does work, this is the original shot where I took some sort of walled city or part. This might not even be a city. This could be just like any set of 3D shapes that I push together real close. And then I take little bits and pieces and just, generate my own little sets of props and weird, intricate details and splice it all together into a shot. So this is like an actual 3D set. The camera's underneath filming upward, or you could argue the whole set is leaning backwards to give it that sense of being above our perspective from the camera. So I generate all of this, and then that is turned into this shot. If you can see that, that's turned into this shot. So obviously I'm doing a whole bunch of posts, adding the sky, adding effects, the text, everything else, all these little extra lights and details and atmospherics and, so all that becomes the artsy fartsy part where we end up going in and doing all sorts of extra work, even chopping all of these up. Doing all of this stuff is what it takes. But that's what we put together, if you can see that. So that's the original shot. And again, this is the after one that was actually used in the book for the Pete Mobile. So let's see what else. Oh, let's talk about this. Okay, so he hangs down the rope. Now, so I didn't think of this until I got to here in the book. And of course, that's what's funny about doing a lot of this stuff is that in your mind, you think it's going to go one way. And when you actually start making stuff, you realize that you're not quite as prepared as you think. So the car floats down. He lands a bit away from the house. He doesn't pull up right in front, and he switches and drives up and parks it. And you can see like some of the parts are still there. The wheel has dropped down. So it's a different configuration when he wants to drive it around, because you don't just fly everywhere. Some vehicles, as you can see, are still land-based. So just because, they have hovering technology, not everything is going to be taking advantage of it. So in the Daz Studio, I loaded up both versions of the Pete Mobile. So this is the flying version. You can see that the wheel rotates up and out. Like I said, it wouldn't actually work this way, but it's enough for, my quote-unquote comic book purposes, is that it's a pseudo technology that's just close enough that you're not sitting there questioning every little detail about it. But it is cool enough to sort of make sense. The engines rotate up. These are on a little gimbal or whatever that is, that it puts the AC unit, because we made the joke about how hot the unit gets. And they talk about heat and how do you dispel heat. But yeah. So this bar obviously slides up, comes out and slides out. Everything kind of rotates around between the two of them. And that is it. The inside was also, I don't think the inside took a whole lot of modeling. There's basically just equipment and controllers, a server to run a lot of the programs that make the technology work. In this one, this indicates the lights are on, so the headlights work. You know, I needed to kind of actually work so I could open the doors, put characters in it, have things actually work. So I kind of needed like a vehicle that was rigged that I could do things with, and at the same time, just have all that cool extra technology to make it actually work. So this is two versions, two different modes. And then on the inside, throughout the book, I used my own product. I made a bunch of sort of 3D holographic images, so that's usually what gets overlaid over all these panels. These are just funky little consoles. Yeah, this is a console I brought in. This is probably some sort of futuristic laptop sort of device, so we loaded that up so that we have a control device for the car. You know, different technology, things that help it actually work. And that is it for the Pete Mobile. Let's take a look at something else. So even when they were in school making fun of him. So when you see Pete hanging off the side of the car, this is sort of hinted at and teased that he's into mountain climbing. And he's always wanted to climb mountains, so he's into that whole mountaineer thing. And, you know, that's why he has a little bit of skills, because he's actually into it. And he's not going cold right into that. Back out front, and again, this was Harry's car, which is obviously, you know, you can see that it doesn't even really have the wheel housing anymore. It's the futuristic version of it, another floating truck with a bit of anti-gravity gear here. And Pete's car was out front when they first came out of St. Arc. So, you know, this was it, that Mary Jane was actually going to take the ride and get a ride home from Pete when she thought this was his car. You know, like, well, you know, it's a nice car, you know, sure, I'll take a ride from you. And then when she actually does see his car and a part comes off, you know, she opts out and just says, okay, I think I'll take public transportation instead. So it's a little interesting that now we fast forward, you know, obviously everyone's gotten a bit closer. She's a lot more trusting, and she's willing to take that ride now. You know, but she still has reservations. You know, do I need to say a prayer? You know, right before she gets in, which is funny, you know, that there's a problem. But yeah, and of course, like any, you know, teenager, you know, young adult, he does want to impress her. So she's in, you know, she mentions the air cleaners, so she wants to go see one, so he heads up. But that's a bit of a recap. So, you know, now you know what's going on. Obviously, this is going to be his vehicle of choice for a good time to come. You can imagine a little bit of foreshadowing where a lot of this stuff can go. It does go in some very cool places. And that was it. The Pete Mobile almost kills Mary Jane the first time they get in it. There's the holographic displays I talked about that I overlay inside the car. These are actually real panels, which is sometimes cool to do it, like not in post, but do it in the actual 3D environment. So, you know, you can always come up with shots you didn't quite expect to look as good as they did. I like to switch back and forth between, you know, practical stuff that's done and then other stuff. But yeah, that was it. And then he's got the little helipad on top because he has the apartment on the rooftop. Easy access to come and go. You know, fog, hard to see, a lot of wind on top. So that would be it. I thank you for checking out my work. This is the Dynamic Spider-Man Plus, being shared on social media outlets. 8 books are done in the series. We're in the middle of book 3. So I thank everyone that's been hanging out. Please subscribe. Let me know your feedback, comments, and concerns are appreciated. I'll try to answer them in the next one, and I will see you guys. Thank you.